I went to New York in, I think, the fall of 1977, and I had an exhibit of my work at this place called the Modern Age, which is a lab on the east side, but they had a gallery space, and I had my first, solo exhibit. And when I was in New York, I went around to a lot of the big photo galleries, Marlboro and Rizzoli and all these places in sort of Midtown. And I remember one curator looking at my urban landscape and saying, well, this work is really beautiful, but it lacks emotional content. And that kind of shut me down. So I stashed those negatives away and really didn't touch them for like 30 years. But I've been doing, photography in New York, developing portraiture. I started seeing, I was with this girl for a while who was this really beautiful Brazilian girl, and she was kind of like my muse, and she'd see me pull out the camera and kind of like raise her eyebrows and go, okay, we're doing photography 101 now. But I got a lot of practice doing that. But still, I had gone to film school in somewhere at Harvard that I wanted to be a film director, and but I did, between like 1980 and for most of the 80s, I did jobs that were, I guess, maybe tangentially related to the film business, but never really connected with directing. Although I did direct one little music video in 1986, but I produced some videos. I worked in RCA video discs. I produced a couple of music videos, but I didn't really connect creatively. Then in 1986, I got a job offer and moved to LA, and I was running a stock footage library. And it was a stock footage library / production company. Worked there for a couple of years. Then in 1988, I formed with two other guys a production company in Los Angeles. And I was the sales guy. There was a director who specialized in directing very, at the time, computer graphics and special effects. And the other guy was like a lawyer / producer, and I was the sales guy. So I would take this director's reel around town and try and raise, get jobs. And I actually did pretty well. We had a couple of good jobs and had some money in the bank. But then after a year in business, these two guys came to me one day and said, we don't like how you're doing things. We don't want you in the company anymore. And it was very traumatic because I had actually borrowed with my dad's co-signature like $17,000 to invest in the original company. And we had probably, with the jobs I had brought in, a couple $100,000 in the bank. And these guys said to me, well, we don't want you in the company. We'll give you $4,000 buyout. And so it was pre-internet days, 1989 for me, pre-internet. I opened the Yellow Pages. I found this crusty old lawyer in Santa Monica, hired him, sued these guys, actually won like $25,000. So I was able to pay off my loan, and I had a few $1,000s left over. And so I said, what do I want to do now where I don't need partners? And I'll get credit for my own ideas, because this guy would always take credit for and I said, I love photography. I'd done it, as a hobby. I said, I'm going to be a photographer. And I got some business cards printed up, some 6x9 cards with some of my black and white portraits on them and other things. And I just had, my name, my phone number, and photography. And I went around in Los Angeles. I went to like the magazine stands, the bookstores, and I developed a mailing list of all the people in Los Angeles who could possibly hire a photographer. Included all the publicists at the movie studios, law firms for corporate portraits, anyone. I had about maybe a mailing label in my computer at the time, which was a Gateway desktop computer, which I think had an 80 megabyte hard drive, and it could do mailing lists. So I did a mailing list of like 1,200 stickers, and every 6 to 8 weeks I'd go and stuff like 1,200 envelopes and mail them out, and then make as many follow-up phone calls as I could, and out of that maybe get 2 or 3 meetings. But I had my first job was through this guy who worked in an advertising agency. I think it was Bates, and he hired me to do a jewelry ad for Giorgio of Beverly Hills, which I did. Then a friend of mine, or this woman who I'd known, who was a producer, secretary to a TV producer, said, do you want to come and try and do some photos on this TV pilot we're producing? I said, sure, it sounds like fun, and I really had no idea what to do. But a friend of mine lent me some equipment, and I borrowed some stuff, and I borrowed a sound blimp, which was one of the things, housing for the camera, which silences or reduces the noise of the camera shutter. And I went on the set of this TV pilot. It was called Sunset Beat, and it was about these 4 undercover cops who dressed as Harley-Davidson bikers, but they were cops. And one of the cops was this guy at the time who had hair down to his shoulders, was George Clooney. So that was my first job, and I got yelled at by one of the actors because kind of the stigma as a still photographer is it distracts the actors from their lines. So anyway, that was my first job in that. And then being a photographer, I had thought about this idea of doing a project, like a book project in Hollywood, and it would be a good way to get my name around or whatever. So I wanted to do this project where I began photographing women behind the scenes in Hollywood, not famous actresses, but women who were agents, assistants, and so forth. And one of the women that I met and became friendly with and photographed was a woman named Christina Hare, who at the time was the assistant to Oliver Stone. And Oliver, at that time, was filming the movie The Doors. And so on movie sets, there are 2 basically types of photographers. The day-to-day unit photographer, it's called. He's a guy who's a member of the crew and is on the set and just photographs the goings-on. And that's what I was doing on that TV pilot, which ended after 4 episodes. They pulled the plug. So that was like I did that for like a month. But the other kind of photography on movie sets, they call special photography. That's when they hire a big-name photographer like Annie Leibovitz or Herb Ritz to come in and do a one-day photo shoot. It's a very high-end glamour, thing, and it's a high-paying job, and it's much more prestigious. Anyway, through Christina Hare, Oliver Stone's assistant, she arranged for me to meet with Oliver Stone. And I went into his office, and his producer was there with him, and he looked through my portfolio, which at the time was just black and white prints that I made in the darkroom. No famous people, but some portraits of some bikers and other things I did. And he thumbed through my work, and he said, "Man, this guy's stuff is great." And he told his producer, "Hire this guy for the special shoot for The Doors," which at the time was the most sought after job by all the big name photographers, and I, a virtual nobody, got this job. So that was sort of my entree into that world.